This is the brief Getting Started overview on how eDynamic Learning's courses can be used in blended learning classrooms. This Getting Started overview is meant to give you a launching point to get the wheels spinning, so to speak, on how you can leverage EDL's digital courses in blended learning classrooms. The implementation of blended learning can vary based on the education setting, the instructional purpose, the blended learning model adopted, the curriculum or digital courseware, the technology available, and the students. It isn't a one-size-fits-all approach, and in fact will vary from school to school and classroom to classroom depending on district, administrator, and teacher goals and resource access. In its simplest form, blended learning is the intersection of online learning plus face-to-face learning. There are a variety of blended learning implementation models, and they can be used individually in classrooms or in combination with other blended learning models. It really depends on the resources available, the goals, the teacher comfort level, and so many other factors. According to the Christensen Institute, blended learning is a combination of 1. Our students learning partially online, having an element of control over the time, place, and pace. 2. Our students learning at a brick and mortar location. And 3, offering our students various modalities or activities along their path of learning in a course that are connected so that learning experience is fully integrated. Let's take a look at an example of what Mr. Hubbard did in his science classroom to implement blended learning through using an EDL course. In this example, he is introducing his students to the cardiovascular system and the heart. And he has chosen to combine 2 different implementation models of both station rotation and flipped classroom. First, Mr. Hubbard doesn't assign traditional homework to his students. Rather, what is typically used to kick off a lesson using direct instruction is assigned for the night before the lesson, and content is explored further the next day in class. In this example, Mr. Hubbard has chosen to assign the lesson video. The students are exposed to the introduction of the new content outside of the core classroom, so more time can be spent with him in small group the next day, and allowing for other differentiated and personalized learning opportunities inside the classroom. The next day in class, Mr. Hubbard had different stations set up for the students to explore in collaborative groups, pairs, and individually, where they could extend their learning in a variety of concept and topic-related activities. In the first station, Mr. Hubbard gave students voice and choice by allowing them to choose from a couple of different hands-on activities he had selected from the Blended Learning Strategies guide available to him in his teacher resources. Depending on where he was at in the unit, Mr. Hubbard could have also made EDL course labs or activities or teacher-created content and experiments part of this station. Mr. Hubbard set up another station for students to work through EDL lesson content. Depending on where students were at in their understanding and their personal pace, students could also complete text questions, discussion questions, flashcards, a quiz, their lab or activity research, listen to the unit podcast, and any additional videos. The last station was set up for small group time with Mr. Hubbard, where he could go over the questions that students wrote down in their science journals while watching the direct instruction of video the previous night. He could also use this time to really encourage students to think critically and problem solve. He even had an example problem at his station in which he asked students to think about how to solve based on their introduction to the concept. This would open up a huge conversation with students, and Mr. Hubbard would be able to identify gaps and accelerants in his students' thinking and understanding of the concept, which allowed him to make decisions on next steps for instruction for the next lesson. Mr. Hubbard's example of leveraging an EDL course in his blended learning classroom is only a highlight, as eDynamic curriculum can be flexibly leveraged to fit a wide range of blended learning implementation models. Regardless if you're just getting started with blended learning in your classroom or are a seasoned pro, eDynamic Learning has the resources you need to leverage digital curriculum in your blended learning initiatives. To learn more about how eDynamic Learning can support your blended learning goals, visit our website at eDynamicLearning.com/blended-learning or reach out to your representative to learn more about our blended learning professional development offerings. We look forward to partnering with you to meet your curriculum and implementation goals.